you have no confidence in self, you are twice defeated in the race of life. A people without knowledge of their past, history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. Liberate the minds of men, and ultimately you will liberate the bodies of men. Men who are earnest, but not afraid of their consequences.
They try to put my soul in a black hole, but didn't realize this melanin is gold. That's why I shine with this little light of mine.
Let's get it. Let's go. You're now tuning into Civics for the Culture, hosted by me, Bennie, aka Poeticlee Williams III, and that's Poeticlee. You can find me on all social platforms. Remember, I'm not a politician. I'm not a lawyer. However, I'm someone just like you that has access to information to be educated, to wise up on this system that we're in, man. This system that we're in that's been created in some formats to hinder us, yes, as people of color. You know, all people can be affected by the laws. However, being that this land was, I'm going to say it every show, being that this land was birthed off slavery, being that this land was birthed off violence, being this land was birthed off of prejudice, where you had Jim Crow era, being this land was burnt off terrorism against people, quote unquote, against Americans, you know? So once you start to uncover all these different smoke and mirrors, once you start to pull the veil behind all these different things that was nicely packaged growing up, thinking, oh, this is the land of the free. No, this is the land of, you can be powered or you can be empowered. And we're going to be empowered on this show, Civics for the Culture, right here on Watch LOTUS X, on how we can be smart and through this system, how we can be smart through this Constitution and amendments that are here to protect us. However, there's misconduct. There's misconduct through these amendments. There's misconduct through these legislations, because there are a lot of loopholes that find their way into these situations that we don't even know and that we aren't even aware about. And specifically, what I want to talk about today, as every week we're going to discuss, as if you see in the method now, we're going to discuss a revolution that's happened, or revolutionary groups that have formed. We're going to discuss different groups, then the groups that are partaking now, that are active, that are out here on these streets, the activists that are out here on these streets. But then we're also going to take a look into some of the amendments and the cases that have been established, and where the loopholes are, where the gray area is, and how you can be affected, how we are currently having civilians and citizens affected now, and how their amendments and their rights are being kind of I would say violated in some sense. You know, when we look at the situation happening right now in Portland, where you have the president saying that there's an anarchy happening, right? And the use of Homeland Security coming in to a city. See, understand, we're going to do this on this show here, is to break down, understand what are these different ranks, right, of security. Homeland Security right there alone is issued into a city, especially what's happening right now. They're issued into a city when by the executive department of the United States, and its primary mission is to prevent terrorist attacks within the United States. So if you're not up to date with the situation happening in Portland right now, with the protests, just like a lot of cities, a lot of protests are still happening, which we got to keep pushing through. We got to keep pushing through and punching through. This is a fight. You got to understand, we were born into a system that we had to fight to get out of. And that is rising out the mud. That is the lotus rising out the mud. Hence, watch LOTUS X. And that is the rose rising out the concrete, because the system was thrown. We were born into something. I'm going to talk about Jim Crow era every day, because that was a real thing. This isn't just a movie. It established an etiquette and way people talked and how they treated people of color. It established an etiquette on how you think about somebody. So if you look at this etiquette and how it kind of spread, right? We always focus on, I don't know, and I don't know if it's just the naivety. Is that a word, naivety? It should be. I think it is. But I don't know if it's just being naive to the fact that, hey, there were once racists, right? There was once this time where you had all these terrible things happen. Wouldn't you think that seed went to their children? Wouldn't you think that seed went to their nephews or to their nieces? Wouldn't you think that seed went down to the people to the children they were leading, to how they were talking behind closed doors and the children heard it? So if that case happened, right? You know how you were raised, some things you may have heard in the house. What about some of these people that were racist? What about some of these people that were prejudiced? What about some of these people that were bigots? What about some of these people that were really nasty and disgusting in these time periods towards people of color and how they talked behind closed doors? You don't think that seed has spread? Yeah, it has spread. And we're now looking at the effects of that even in 2020 when you have people saying, well, damn, what's going on? Why are we still going through this? We're still going through this because things spread, things are planted. So what are we planting now? What are we planting now? Ask yourself, what are you planting now towards to better the next generation in this system? Because you're in a system. How are we reorganizing, reordering the system? And that's what we want to do right here is learn. Because when you see Homeland Security entered and executive ordered in 2 cities, as is now being called upon, we start to see military ammunition and militarized weapons into cities where you have civilians. Like, who are we trying to fight? Who are we trying to fight rather than rehab and really listen, understand? That is the issue. That is the issue why we're protesting. Instead of having conversations, instead of seeing uh government officials, and instead of seeing, which you do have some, so let me not say all, but instead of seeing that, we're seeing the fight being brought to us. And that's what's going to happen in life. You're either going to have people fight or flight, but we should rise our consciousness above that, right? When you had the Homeland Security brought into cities to prevent terrorist attack, hey, it was a terrorist attack that's been brought on black people, on black lives by police throughout this time. Yet when we scream, when we holler, when we let our voice be heard, it's an issue then. It's your issue then. But you can go out here and you can kill us. You can harm us. You can bring brutality to us. But we voice that. Now when our bubble is popped and we want to voice that, it's an issue when we now have to have militarized units brought into our cities to patrol that. That's what's being shown to you. It should be clear in front of your face right then what is happening. The control that is happening, the manipulation that is happening is right in front of your face. And one thing I want to talk about that is your right. Your right. The Fourth Amendment protects a right that right now is kind of being violated. When you have protesters in Portland being picked up off the street by unmarked vehicles, by people not wearing their badges, by people in regular street clothes, but saying, oh, we're with the feds, we're with the Homeland Security, we're with some kind of federal department. No, 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 no. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. So what I want to do is I want to read an article. This is right here on how Fourth Amendment police misconduct cases work. All right. So if you in a situation, my whole thing here is we're not going to just talk about it. I'm not just going to preach my ass off about it. I'm actually going to find out how can we find solutions to my brothers and my sisters that are being mistreated by the system, and they may not know. A lot of times we don't know. It's a lot of things I do not know that I'm having to learn, because when you have powers that be that know the loopholes, they will use the loopholes to grab you and to wrap you up in it, right? So let's learn about the Fourth Amendment and how police misconduct cases can work, especially if you're in these cities where you're being seized, you're being violated, mistreated, and you're just protesting. That's it. So let's go into it. If you've been illegal, and this right here is on Sinus Dreams Law Firm. Sinus Dreams Law Firm. Shout out to them for writing this article right here. So if you've been illegally seized by police or other law enforcement, you may be able to bring a claim against the government to recover for your injuries. These cases are brought under the 42 USC 1983 federal statute which allows individuals to sue the government for violations of their civil rights. Elements required for proving the police misconduct. Let's go into them. Understanding when you may have a claim can be difficult. The laws in this area are complex, as you would tend to think they are, but there are several basic requirements. First, you must have suffered a seizure as the law defines that term. That seizure must have been performed by a government actor, such as a police officer. Then that seizure must have been unreasonable under the circumstances of your case. And finally, you must have suffered an injury of some sort as a result of the seizure. So, oh man, here we go into loopholes. So, excuse me. Oh man, got this room is super cold, so now I got the sniffles. But even if you are able to establish these requirements, you must also make sure that none of the defenses available to the government agent is applicable. So, yeah, okay, I'm on the street protesting, and here I am just picked up by somebody, right? Right. It's quote unquote supposed to be an officer, but I'm picked up by somebody in maybe military clothes, and I'm just thrown in this vehicle. Do I have a right to sue then? Here, go based off these requirements for proving a police misconduct claim, you must have suffered a seizure. And the seizure must then lead to some kind of injury, right? And then it must be unreasonable. So even if I was out there protesting, now the cases are coming out that hey, we were grabbing you off the street for your safety. And that's going to be their case that they're going to stick to. We're protecting you. Hey, uh, nah. So what constitutes a Fourth Amendment seizure? The Fourth Amendment guarantees, let's get into what the Fourth Amendment detailedly says. The Fourth Amendment guarantees the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. An individual is seized when by means of physical force or show of authority, his freedom of movement is restrained. United States v. Mendenhall, if, however, the person to whom questions are put remains free to disregard the questions and walk away, there had been no intrusion upon that person's liberty or privacy as would under the Constitution require some particularized and objective justification. So there's always going to be a way that law can justify, hey, why was this person seized? Well, like I said, we're protecting you for your safety. Hey, why was this person pushed? Oh, we were quickly moving through trying to clear the streets. You see how these different loopholes can get in there. But yes, it's unreasonable for you to use the force that you are using against me. It's unreasonable for you to come grab me if I'm on the street using my First Amendment, which is the right to let my voice be heard. Let's get to that. It should be noted that seizures are not specifically limited to the detainment of an individual. Any mechanism deployed by law enforcement officials to impede an individual's movement may constitute a seizure for Fourth Amendment purposes. So now we're getting somewhere. It should be noted that seizures are not specifically limited to the detainment of an individual, and any mechanism deployed by law enforcement officials to impede an individual's movement may constitute a seizure for Fourth Amendment purposes. And that was the Broward v. Inyo County, where individual driving a stolen car, check this out, an individual driving a stolen car and being pursued by police was killed after hitting a police barricade designed to stop him. The court found that the suspect had been seized because the death occurred through means intentionally applied. Intentionally applied. Also, we talked about a case, Tennessee v. Garner, where you had a young boy shot and killed while he was being pursued by law enforcement. Which, yeah, go back to that episode. We talked about that I think that was our very first episode, Tennessee v. Garner. So as we get to talking about what's reasonableness, right? What is reasonableness? What is unreasonable? It's all these trickery words, all these gray words of what's actually taking place, right? And that's the main thing when it comes to law. What is the fact? Anytime you're in these situations, so if you're somebody out there on these streets protesting, if you're somebody out in these streets trying to make your voice be heard, and you're caught in a situation where law enforcement is now questioning you or trying to even seize you, and like seizure, what we're talking about right here, it's the facts of what you're doing. And it's clear that, remember, there's a system set up. There's a system set up. So once you start trying to rebel, the system can be used and tricked against you. So it's like you have to really know Jedi mind tricks of, hey, I'm just out here protesting. Hey, I'm just out here protesting. Hey, Black Lives Matter. Hey, once officers want to start trying to touch you, these are officer names. I'm just letting my voice be heard. I'm just letting my voice be heard. And I'm standing freely, right? So the reasonableness requirement, once it has been determined that the plaintiff was in fact seized, the focus must turn to the reasonableness of the force exerted on the plaintiff by the law enforcement officer. Lifting directly from the Fourth Amendment's textual focus on reasonableness, the United States Supreme Court has held that determine whether the force used to effect a particular seizure is reasonable. This is where it gets tricky. Under the Fourth Amendment requires a careful balancing of the nature and quality of the intrusion on the individual's Fourth Amendment interests against countervailing governmental interests at stake. So look here. Yeah, we understand that you're out here protesting. However, if we think that there's terrorism happening out here, then it makes it reasonable for us to then use force. Bullshit. No. If you see me out here just peacefully protesting, that's how narratives get changed, right? We need to start really defining what terrorism is. Terrorism when you have people go inside of a church and shoot members of that church. It's terrorism when you're in Las Vegas at a concert and then open fire just starts shooting and starts killing several bunches of people. It's terrorism when a school is shot up and you have children die. That's terrorism, right? Let's define what terrorism. When you see people of color, not even just people of color, when you see these are white people. So I want to say that too. I love seeing my white brethren and sisters out here fighting the fight too, because it's important. You got to understand the history. Yes, we're trying to push past for unity for all, but it's important to see you all out here on the fight, because this is a fight that has been one-sided, because the injustices have been one-sided, right? So when you start having all these different things happen, no. We got to understand. We got to define certain things. When we out here trying to make our voice heard, do not manipulate the situation. When we're trying to make our voice heard, don't try to change the narrative to make it seem like we're rioting. Stop that. And that's why we need more on the street journalists, because it's a lot of narrative, manipulating the narrative and manipulating the story to make it seem a certain type of way, so that when you have certain actions take place, such as seizures of persons, we have the Fourth Amendment right, when you have it violated, they can change the narrative and make it seem to the world and on media that, hey, this is the reason why we had to violate it. No, that's not the case. So the court has further defined that, and this was a Graham v. Connor case. The court has further defined that the reasonableness of a particular use of force must be judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene, rather than with the 2020 vision of hindsight. Damn. Not every push or shove, even if it may later seem unnecessary. That's what we were just talking about. Right here. Even though it may seem unnecessary in the peace of a judge's chambers, violates the Fourth Amendment. Not every unnecessary push or shove violates the Fourth Amendment. Really. The calculus of reasonableness must embody allowance for the fact that police officers are often forced to make split-second judgments. Now, that is true. You're in a job that you got to make a judgment that is like unlike any other. However, you're trained for that job, right? Let's keep moving. In circumstances that are tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving, about the amount of force that is necessary in a particular situation. So let me read that one more time in the whole, because I had to stop in there. The calculus of reasonableness must embody allowance for the fact that police officers are often forced to make split-second judgments in circumstances that are tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving about the amount of force that is necessary in particular situation. So, finally, the court noted that the focus must be on whether the actions were objectively reasonable as opposed to a subjective standard. Interesting. Let me read that one more time. The court noted that the focus must be on whether the actions were objectively reasonable as opposed to the subjective standard. So, in that sense of objectively reasonable, going right back to the kind of the same analogy I've been using, not even analogy, the situation that are literally happening right now. We're grabbing these civilians and citizens that are protesting that out in these streets. We're just grabbing them in our unmarked clothing. So that's key. I think that's something that has to be pointed out. And when these civilians, I hope that push and sue, there's actually there has been a case. So we'll get to that. But when they sue, I hope they say, hey, these people are unmarked clothes, unmarked vehicles. That's a little dangerous. That's not even a little dangerous. That's hella dangerous. What are we really doing? What kind of precedent are we really setting? What the specific officer believed was reasonable is irrelevant unless the reasonable officer in the same situation would have reacted in the same manner. So, and that is why, ladies and gentlemen, code blue is so powerful. That is why the badge is so powerful. That is why that brotherhood, that sisterhood, that fraternity organization is so powerful. I talked about police deriving from slave patrols. I have brothers and sisters that are in the police. I talk at the same time how we need to infiltrate the police. Now, when I say infiltrate, you may say, infiltrate. Why use that word? I'm talking about, well, you need to just join. Why? Because I don't want to keep seeing people that don't look like me, that don't know my experience behind these positions and with this quote unquote authority. However, they don't know how to talk to me. However, they don't know how to have a human heart. What happens when you go behind that badge? You just lose your heart? No, that's not the case, because I know too many good officers, too many great officers that are out here serving and protecting, and literally doing what is titled serve and protect. So what about you other officers that haven't got that cleansed out of your system yet? What's going on there? You already have the badge and the gun. So why this extra force unless it's another hidden agenda? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about some of these hidden agendas that are secretly behind closed doors that you may not even know about, that a lot of us don't know about. But we're going to crack all that. We're going to take the veil off all this because it's the time. It's the time to do it. It's the time is now. We've got to make our voices heard, and we got to know legally what's going on through the system that can still hinder us and still put us behind bars and not let us be truly free as we should, and push for unity in this country, because that's the ultimate goal. So, Fourth Amendment, know your rights, know your rights, know where you should be secure in your persons, your paper, your houses, know how you should be secure. And if any time that's violated, know your right and how you can stand for that right. That's here on Civics for the Culture, hosted by me, Bennie, aka Poeticlee, right here on Watch LOTUS X. Tune in and wise up. Until next time, peace.